All right, Scott Squad, we are back in the building, and we got to talk about this Love and Marriage Huntsville reunion part three. Okay, now I think that all three parts of this reunion were honestly a trifecta of reunion goodness. Okay, I mean, for me, there was emotion, there was intensity. You know it's intense and good when the host of the reunion is crying buckets upon buckets upon buckets of tears. Okay, you even got Melody to shed a tear, and Melody looked like she had on the full armor of the Lord. Okay, and was bent on not giving any emotion. Okay, but when you even had her crack the veneer of just I'm not giving y'all anything, okay? You know that this is hitting home, okay? So this was good to me. This was real good. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to have to give it a 10. This is my just watched it reaction. I'm not doing this live today because I got a lot to do today and tomorrow. So I'm just trying to this is me right after watching the episode. Okay. So I wanted to do it fresh. I wanted to do it live, but I know a lot of people, ain't up late, doing this. So I'm like, I said, let me just hop on this good computer and hit the record button, baby. So here we are with the fresh review, right? All right. So let's get into it. Let's get down to it. We start with Kimmy versus Destiny. We pick up from last week. And it's not really like versus, but it's really more or less Kimmy trying to explain to Destiny, like, hey, you know what? We all have these moments where production is trying to pull something from us and we think we giving it to them, but they ain't really getting what we saying. And then we do stuff and it don't play out. It happens to everybody. So Destiny's like, I think Kimmy's trying to convey, like, listen, for whatever reason, there's still a disconnect between what you are thinking that you're giving and what you're actually giving the audience. And honestly, I gotta agree. It's in the comments, it's coming from production, it's coming from cast members. There is some reason that whatever Destiny thinks that she is giving is not connecting. And I'm not saying that she's not giving it, but what I'm saying is whatever she's doing is not resonating. It's not landing in the way that she might think is landing. You know what I'm saying? So she's got to figure out a way to connect. And I don't think she's done that quite just yet. Do y'all get what I'm saying? Holla in the chatterization if you feel me what I'm saying, okay? Um, Destiny says the next season we'll see her man. Okay. He apparently was maybe invited to this reunion, but for unforeseen circumstances or for circumstances for which she is not going to explain to us, the man couldn't be there. Okay. But a few people on the cast have met him, like Tiffany and Lewis, okay, who I mean, we'll talk about them in a minute, okay? We'll talk about them in a minute. Then we go into Melody versus Destiny, and this part to me was very, very interesting. And I did a poll on my Instagram asking, do y'all think that these two ever could come back and be friends? I'm always naive to a certain degree. Or I'm always hopeful, I think, when I see two people who were clearly friends and then they become like bitter enemies on a reality TV show. I always hate when I see that. So in my mind, there are only a few instances in my life where I can think of where I was friends with somebody and I would absolutely never, ever be friends with them again. Like probably two 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 people I could think of. But outside of that, I mean, I feel like, there's an opportunity to come back from just about anything, but maybe not especially in this situation, because things have just gone, I mean, from bad to worse with Melody and Destiny. Melody references an interview that Destiny did where she was speaking about Melody only visiting for 5 minutes after Destiny's divorce. To me, I don't know where that came from because I don't recall that being a part of the story. It seemed to me as though what Destiny said seemed to be the catalyst for the demise of this friendship, wherein Destiny was having a conversation with Leticia, out, in the room. Melody overheard it and maybe didn't like something she heard or didn't like the fact that Destiny was connecting with Leticia and Leticia and Melody were on the outs. That seemed to me, from my remembrance, to be where it started from. But I ain't in people's heads, so I don't know. But based on what, if I'm looking with my two eyes at the screen, that's what it seems like it was, right? So, you know, Destiny, like I said, she feels like it started after that, after last season's reunion. Carlos wanted to know what Destiny said about Melody. And Melody says, "Well, I mean, Destiny says, well, I want to know what Melody heard." And Melody's like, "Well, you can keep on wanting then." And so Destiny's like, "Well, she's not gonna keep playing in my face." And Melody says, "I'm not playing in your face. I don't even talk to you, sweetie." I was like, "Oh Lord." I mean, it was just bad, man. It was just bad. I mean, and when Melody dropped that, I mean, you could hear a pin drop, okay? Because you could definitely tell like she was not trying to give Destiny any energy at all, okay? None. And she called Destiny sweetie. Okay, y'all know that sweetie word. Oh, on this show, it causes problems. So anyway, Leticia then jumps in and says Melody needed a storyline. Here we go again with the storyline. Y'all know I hate that that assertion, that accusation, that allegation, that this idea that someone needs a reason to do something in order to make television happen. You know what I'm saying? And the reason, whether or not it's true or not, I hate when the topic is brought up because it really takes me out of the television show aspect. Like, I want to feel like I'm still watching reality. And when you start introducing this notion of storylines, which could again be true, but I feel like it takes us, the audience, out of having our own real feelings about these situations because then everything on our screen just feels contrived. And if that's the case, then we might as well be watching a scripted show. You know what I'm saying? And we're watching reality TV shows because we want to at least feel like there's some realness to this show because that's where our feelings come in, and that is why we are so passionate about it. So when you keep talking about these storylines, it just irks me to my soul. Okay, now for Letitia's part, she says that she was talking to Destiny after the reunion and telling Destiny that she needed to talk to Melody because Melody seemed sad because they was talking about Martell during the cheating segment. He was running all up and through the streets or whatever the case may be during the panorama, okay? When everybody was supposed to be on lockdown, he was, off doing whatever with whoever or whatever. And so Melody don't believe it. And Leticia is just adamant that she was sad for Melody, even though, according to Leticia, she says that Melody has a dark soul and she is the definition of the devil in sheep's clothing. Okay. And then Mel says, well, you should be glad me and my dark soul are out of your life. And then they kind of go back and forth a little bit. Um, it's really hard for me to really give any opinions about Destiny and, well, not really Destiny, but Leticia and Melody, because for real, I kind of feel like that friendship is just so done and over that I just kind of think that at this point, y'all just bickering. Y'all don't like each other. Y'all will probably never be friends again. The only reason you guys are at this point interacting is because you guys are on the same television show together. But otherwise, this group just feels very disconnected at this point. And it almost feels like, well, why are we even bothering with having a conversation with these two women who obviously cannot stand the sight of each other? Okay. So Destiny, when asked if Destiny 2 feels like Melody is dark in the soul department, um, Destiny feels like there are things that Melody does that are dark. And she says, like going on the nightcap and stating that she gave $6,000 to keep the lights on. And we get a flashback of Melody giving that sort of that giving the details of that on the nightcap with Carlos King. By the way, is that coming back, Carlos? We need to know. Inquiring minds need to know. It was actually a really good show for me, in my opinion. So I'm like, bring it on back, because it was obviously the catalyst for a lot of the drama that went down this past season on Love and Marriage Huntsville. So I'm like, if you gonna give us that, then continue to give us, if y'all gonna give us all this drama that plays out on the screen, continue to give us the nightcap. Thank you. But anyway, Destiny feels like the picture that was painted of her was that she was destitute and that Melody swooped in like God above and saved her. And she wants the people to know that that was not the case. Melody allegedly also stopped someone from doing business with her as well. Um, and so Melody then asked Carlos asked Melody, do you feel like Destiny was too chummy with Martell? No, I don't know how we got to this line of questioning. Maybe we skipped something because I felt like it was just like a shift. Okay. But Melody feels like, well, I'm paraphrasing this here. Like she and Destiny were girlfriends going through something similar. She claims that she had no idea that Martell and Destiny were so close, because when she and Destiny were going through their situations, they was really commiserating on the phone together. But apparently, Destiny would be taking calls from Martell, but also telling Melody, yo, this your man calling. He calling and complaining about you, which I'm like, ooh, that's an interesting place to be in. And I think what it does is it kind of goes to show you that the person that's in the middle will always, it's like the messenger. You know what I'm saying? The messenger always gets shot. Okay, that's just it. I don't know why that's the case in real life. And I feel like this is one of the reasons why, when I am friends with couples, I really like, depending on who introduced me, like if my best friend is now like for ooh, I can't here's the thing. It's very hard to be friends with a married couple if the married couple is going through some issues. Because I feel like at some point you're going to have to choose. And whether you want to or not, if you don't want to choose, it's probably best to keep a little bit of a boundary with both of them. Or again, you have to choose one or the other. That's the way it seems. But and maybe that's not fair to the person in the middle. I don't know, but in this situation, it feels to me like Destiny probably should have put up a boundary and said, "Listen, I ain't gonna talk about him with you, and I ain't gonna talk about her with you. I just gotta maintain my neutrality in this situation." Maybe that would have saved her some angst. I don't really know, but I do know it's a difficult position to be in the middle. But regardless of all that, Melody says that Destiny was calling him at 1 and 5 in the morning. And both Martell and Destiny and Carlos looked confused. And I was confusion too, because in my mind, my first question, and Carlos asked this, was like, well, how do you know that she is calling him at 1 and 5 in the morning most recently? So we're gonna get our answer to that. But I was just kind of like, I don't understand how she would know that, right? And I'm just being real. And so Destiny says, oh, you talking about when you hacked his phone? So apparently Melody's saying somebody tried to hack into her phone. So Destiny accuses Melody of hacking into Martell's phone. Melody is quasi accusing Martell of hacking into her phone, if I'm hearing this correctly. And apparently, this is how it was done. Okay, because Martell is maintaining that he did not hack into her phone. He says, but whenever people call his phone and he doesn't answer, it goes to her voicemail or something to that effect, and that she is trying to flip it. Now, again, maybe it's because this whole situation is very fresh in my head and I ain't really sat down and wrote out a diagram to try to figure out how this is supposed to work. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to attempt to do it right now. So I'm calling you, okay? You, my dear viewer that's watching, right? I'm calling you right now, right? And then when I'm calling you, um, let's say somebody we all know. I'm calling you, and when you don't answer the phone, it goes to, I don't know, somebody else's phone. You know what I'm saying? How, who in that is, how does that work? Is that some type of call forwarding feature? It seems like that's what you would do, like if you wanted your calls to go to your home phone or something like that. But in that instance, who is zooming who? Who is who is hacking who? Melody is claiming that his hackers wasn't hacking the way they were supposed to be hacking. The hack didn't hack the way it was supposed to hack, or whatever like that. He calls her pathetic, okay? And she says, no, you are, and your little ugly shoes too, okay? And why did they show us the shoe? Why did they show us the shoe? Production, why did y'all show us these shoes? Why? Why did y'all do this to me? Okay, I thought the shoes was right nice, man. I thought that was right nice. I can't really see us, but I do like a patent leather. Okay, they give patent leather. I do like a patent leather shoe. I do like a little bit of shine and sheen. Okay, now yeah, and that's what we'll say about it. But I was like, why y'all show the shoe? Meanwhile, so Carlos, goes back to Destiny and Melody, and he's basically like, would you like to reconcile with Melody? And she says no, but she does want to clarify that she's not too chummy with Martell. And she says that if she cut Martell off for what he did to Mel, then she would also have to cut Mel off for the same reason. And I'm like, what's T, sis? Because by that statement, you are indicating to me that Melody has in your mind, it seems as though you are alluding to the possibility of Melody in some way, shape, or form either cheating or talking bad about Martell in the same way that maybe Martell was talking bad about Melody. I'm trying to figure out what she was implying there because that wasn't clear. And I wish we had gotten a follow up on that because I was like, what are you saying? Like, let us in on the tea, sis. Like, what you got to say? I might have to follow up with that, if I can get a chance to talk to Destiny or something like that. Because I was like, what is going on here? Okay. Anyway, they go back and forth about Destiny talking to Martell, and Carlos cuts to Stormy to get her thoughts. And she feels like, all of them have been through some ish, but she and Melody haven't really gone through anything. And Martell tells Stormy to retreat, and Stormy says that she's building a friendship with Melody. Now, I thought that they were already friends. Like, am I mistaken, or it? I mean, I the way the way Stormy was introduced was like they was already homegirls. So I'm kind of like, y'all building a friendship. I couldn't tell based on the reunion and what was being said if Stormy was seeming more closer to Destiny at this point than she was with Melody. I really couldn't ascertain what that feeling was, but I'm interested to see where their relationship moves because there's been a lot of speculation online that they're not as cool as they once were. So I'm like, what happened? Did anything happen? Or are me, reading too much into it? I don't know. But I'm just trying to read the tea leaves when it comes to what's really going down with the cast members. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, Mel and Martell then get into it about her not having any friends. And she's like, well, why are you friends with people that joke about you not having a builder's license? Um, is it just so he can say that he's friends with everybody? She says she doesn't do that. If you cross her, she is done. Okay. He's talking about forgiveness, and he says that if she's friends with someone, it's because she wants something. And she tells him that she doesn't need anyone there for anything. And she says God is her source and has been so since she left his dusty ASS. Now, listen, I mean, she was getting in some zingers tonight, okay? But there were also a couple of questions that I do feel like were left unanswered that we really didn't get the answers to from Melody about certain situations. I need to know more about this phone hacking thing and how is this working. She's had to change her number several times, so I don't know what the what is going on. But all I know is um it's real interesting. Okay. And it's about to get more interesting. Okay. So we get into where things fell apart and we revisit, you know, they talk about co-parenting and how it looks different for both of them. And Carlos asks, well, Martell, what's up? Is with you and the co-parenting. And he's like, well, I don't want any men, taking care of my kids and not even the brother. Okay. And Carlos straight up asked, well, is it because the brother's gay? And Martell kind of tiptoes, tap dances a little bit, and ultimately says no. And Melody, for her, she says that all these times that Martell has tried to make it seem like the kids have been with all these different people, it's been her mom and I think maybe one of her aunts or something like that. I can't remember who she said. And then, obviously the brother, but that brother was only what, one time, and it was like two nights, and it was at her house. So she goes into this thing about not giving any more information about things that I guess could prove her side in this custody thing. And she says she would release the information in time. And I'm like, no, release it now. Okay. Um, don't wait. I mean, let's get into it today. Okay. We here at the reunion to get into some things. Let me know what it is today. Okay. I want to know what you got to say. Give us the tea, sis. I mean, what's the tea? What's the tea, sis? Spill it. Anyway, Carlos asked Martell if he thinks it was right to ask for full custody. Martell is like, well, if she doesn't have time for the kids, I'll take them. And then whenever she got time, she can come get the kids. So Carlos revisits how refreshing Destin was. And Martell says that he genuinely misses that. And at that point, Marceau hands Leticia a tissue to hand to Martell, and he kind of laughs it off. And Carlos point blank says to him that he thinks that Martell is troubled inside because he doesn't want to show a particular side of himself that may miss Melody. And Carlos even breaks down like in tears about his concern about Martell because he feels like Martell is so angry and he has to put up a facade of being tough and strong, but that he's still in love with Melody. And let me, say something to that effect. I feel like, particularly in the society in the time period that we live in today, I can understand why Martell's anger why Martell's feelings are translated into anger because for a lot of men, particularly black men, we are socialized that showing that level of emotion is considered like a weakness. and we're socialized on it from a very we're socialized in that way from so many different angles, that it's very hard and difficult a lot of times for a lot of men to drop that facade and really just be and express levels of emotion, particularly when we've seen conversations with Melody and Martell's mom and all of them when they were in Destin about Martell not being able to open up about being bullied in school. And so now that has translated into him not being able to express his emotions in a way that may be a bit more productive, and it comes out as anger. So this was really interesting to me, and it would have been nice to have seen a little bit of Dr. Francis maybe at the reunion to really get some of that angst, or to get some of that depth brought out even more, because I felt like Carlos did a great job, but it would have been interesting to hear what Dr. Francis had to say to Martell about that, because we didn't get Dr. Francis with Martell. We got Dr. Francis with the couples, right? So anyway, um, basically Carlos feels like Martell is still in love with Melody. I think it's pretty obvious that he is. Does that mean that he wants to be with her? I don't know. You know, from what we see in the episodes, it looks like there are times when he may be still reaching out to her. But there's also what we see online from Arion. You know, there's also what we have seen with him and Sheree, which I have to admit oftentimes feels more like a PR play than anything else, even though they look good together. But he and Melody look good together. So I don't really know. You know, it's so difficult to say, but it was also interesting to hear Carlos confront him about these feelings, because with the amount of emotion that Carlos felt, you could definitely tell this was a real moment. So I'm like, oh, this is an interesting space for even Carlos to be in, because if you know that you just had a conversation with Sheree earlier and Martell, and now you're having to peel back the layers of truth about whether or not Martell still is in love with Melody, this is shaping up to be a very interesting love triangle that it appears as though Melody has no interest in being in. However, even seeing Carlos get so emotional and then listening to, you know, what he was saying to Martell, Melody even can't help herself but to get choked up in this moment as well. So it was very, very interesting. And I almost feel like there's a big part of Mel too that has put up this wall of toughness that it broke in those moments. The crack started to show, like it was like, okay, we're getting some real emotion from her, because ultimately I do feel like she kind of was just, she had a wall up for much of the reunion, and it may just be because, you know, she's still hurt from everything that happened in their marriage. And I often kind of feel like, or wonder, if maybe she feels like the spouse that didn't walk away from the group with the group having her back. Because I do feel like sometimes this is, I mean, it's almost kind of giving like some best man vibes, which is again why I think this show is so interesting, because it really dives deep into the nuance of relationships and the sociological impacts on a group of friends, particularly when you have a divorce in that group of friends, and seeing how that that divorce causes a ripple and a fracture amongst the group in so many different ways, that you almost feel like at some point it is only a matter of time before one of those partners begins to isolate from the group. Like it's just, and when you really look at it, it's really, really deep. And I may be going way too deep into the nuance, but I feel like this is the space for it. That's what we do, and I'm gonna have this level of conversation. And if you're not ready for it, let's level it up. Okay. Let's level it up and dive deeper, right? That's what we do. That's what we're here for. Okay. Um, so Carlos believes that he has outbursts of anger because he misses his family. And Carlos asks him point blank, "Do you regret what happened with you guys?" And he says, yes. He regrets a lot of the things he put them through. And Melody also admits that it was saddening for her, but it is done. Okay. And she never thought that she would have a man with a child that she would end up not even liking. And that to me was the nail on the coffin. Like, I never thought that they would get back together, but it was just the fact that at this moment, she don't even like this man. Like, and it's obvious. It is obvious. Um, and so it's interesting because Carlos also talks about, for some women as they rise, the man in their life will start to wonder, like, well, where's the space for me? But then he also says that, he talks to women that, are on the rise as well, and tries to ensure that, especially in the TV space, that they make sure that they have the time, the space, the energy for their partners. And Melody kind of interjects and she's like, well, no, wait a second. you know, um, I was still cooking and cleaning and being intimate, having babies, traveling to Destin 2 to 3 times per year. And Carlos, asked her, was like, "Well, if you could do anything different in the situation, what would you do? Would you do anything?" And she's like, "Well, not to say that I didn't listen, but I probably would have listened a bit more." But she also goes on to say, and I feel like so many people have been in this type of situation, because a lot of times when we go through things and we've been hurt by somebody, we look at the situation and we blame ourselves and we think, dang, what could I have done different? But ultimately, there's probably nothing different that she could have done. But I'm not in their relationship, so I don't really know. And maybe if there was, he maybe didn't communicate it in the best way, because we know that there was a communication issue and the expression of feelings was difficult. So we can see how these past issues bring themselves into the current situation, and they affect our current relationships. So she feels like, she could have given and given and given and given and given, and it never would have been enough. And he doesn't interject. He doesn't say, "Oh no, that's not true." So that leads me to wonder, is he in a different space for his next relationship? Wherein, can she do enough? You know? Um Very interesting psychologically, when you really think about these things. It's such a like, I was so caught up in all of this, in like just watching it all unfold. And Carlos hopes that they can get to a space where they can at least be cordial, and be with the kids together. After the break, we do finally get Tiffany and Lewis. Um, they recap the couple's trip, and Tiffany feeling like Dr. Francis kind of prejudged her. And Carlos asked how it felt to be diagnosed as fake professionally. And Lewis kind of comes out swinging and says Dr. Francis didn't say that. He said that they were playing a game and that Marcel needs to get some new jokes. He says they did this last year and they've shown themselves to be consistent in what they do. Now, what I will say is, I think this was probably one of the first times that I actually really enjoyed Tiffany and Lewis. But I also feel like it was interesting because Carlos also called them out to the carpet and was like, "Well, listen, when y'all first came on the show, y'all made it seem like, intimately, y'all was getting it on and getting it popping. But this season, y'all come on the show and it's kind of like, oh, the intimacy is non-existent." And Lewis says, "Well, no, it was only a couple of weeks where we wasn't really doing the do like that." And I'm like, "What, bro? You made it." I mean, and maybe he says he says they made it. I don't know who they was, made it seem like it was months. But I'm like, brother, it was you. And I don't know if it was because we was watching it for months, but what I do know is something in the milk wasn't right about that story, okay? Because it felt storyline-ish, and y'all know how we feel about storylines, okay? Even the topic, I don't even like to say the word, but it felt like kind of contrived. you know? But they did reveal that Tiffany is 4 months pregnant at this point, and I guess that was what, in October. So I'm assuming she's a lot further along at this point. We get into the Kimmy and Maurice segment, and we talk in depth about you know, her deciding to stay on the show, even though, she wasn't sure about whether or not she should, and how Maurice helped to convince her to stay on the show. And at this point in time, she'd had what, 7 weeks left for chemo. She would do the surgery, and then she would have 30 weeks of radiation. And Carlos then makes the reveal that, he lost his mom due to breast cancer, and she went through it in secret. And he talked about, women asking for the ultrasound after they get their mammograms and how important that is. And I just thought that this conversation was so educational because these are things that you don't typically hear of. You hear about, especially as men or as someone who is not having to get a mammogram, you hear mostly about the mammogram, but you don't hear about the ultrasound being so important. So these little details to me, I think, really highlight how important this particular the telling of this story is in terms of what Kimmy is giving. I just think that there's nothing like this show on television right now, and I think that my hope is that you know as Carlos and as Maurice talk about life being short and people kind of allowing some of the petty drama to really divide them. My hope is that this group, because Carlos also talked about how much chemistry they have, and one of the reasons why the show was picked up is because of that chemistry. I hope that as a result of these things that have occurred on the show, that they don't lose the magic and the chemistry that exists between the six of them, and that permeates through the group as a whole. And so I do kind of worry about that because it does feel a little bit like Melody's on an island by herself. So I want to see the group get back together in some type of way that at least feels a bit more cohesive in this coming new season. But you guys let me know what you think in the comment section down below. This was good. I mean, a lot of times when I do reviews, y'all know I go off and I go kind of, I go off on the tangent. I get into the spirit. And tonight I really it was really more about the emotion and the impact that it left me feeling. And so we do have a slightly different take on the review than what we might normally have, but I felt like it was important because I felt like there was so much that we needed to cover that was so serious, and I felt like I wanted to make sure that I conveyed it in a way that was thoughtful, thought provoking, as well as hopefully providing some level of insight and asking, of course, also the questions that I feel like we need to ask. This week we have a couple of interviews coming up with a couple of cast members. Hopefully everything pans out. So once we get closer to those interviews, then I'll let you guys know what they are and when they'll be out and all those types of things. With that being said, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell button, and of course, I will catch you in the next video.